The hacker behind the most sociopathic cyber attack you'll ever come across has finally been sent to prison. Also in your hacking news roundup, the FCC has fined 4 major cell carriers for selling your location data, and white hat hackers target a zombified Chinese botnet. But first, 6 years in prison is nothing compared to the pain and suffering caused by this hacker. In 2018, Julius Kivimäki gained access to a server operated by Finland's largest psychotherapy company, Vastamo. He stole tens of thousands of patient records, and we're not talking usernames and passwords here, but rather the incredibly sensitive notes from conversations between patients and their therapists. Julius tried to make some quick cash out of his hack by demanding a ransom of roughly $500,000 from Vastamo, but when they refused, he started leaking the records of 100 people each day whilst that ransom went unpaid. And when it finally became clear that the company just had no intention of paying up, Julius set his sights on the 33,000 people he'd stolen the records of, emailing them individually, demanding hundreds of euros in Bitcoin, or else their therapy notes would be leaked for the world to see. And the fallout from this was intense. The week this happened, Finland's nationwide police report statistics more than doubled, and there's reports of some patients just not being able to cope with the prospects of their inner thoughts being revealed and unaliving themselves. Julius followed through on his promise to leak the data dump. However, he made one critical OPSEC mistake when uploading the records. He included a copy of his home folder in the archive by mistake, revealing his SSH keys, details of his other projects, and various log files, sparking an investigation which quickly led to his identification. However, Julius went on the run, sparking a manhunt for the guy which saw him jet-setting around the world on fake IDs, posting pictures of his extravagant lifestyle to social media, and occasionally even hopping on Reddit to taunt those he hurt. However, this all came to an end when he was arrested in France last year. But despite the mountain of evidence against him, Julius maintained his innocence and the case went to trial. He was of course found guilty on all counts, but the most disappointing thing about the judgment was despite the fact the guy has a long criminal history, he's only been sentenced to 6 years in a Finnish prison, which are known for being rather comfy. You see, a quirk of Finnish law meant that despite his extensive criminal history, having previously been convicted of thousands of cybercrimes owing to his association with Lizard Squad, as well as having called in bomb threats and had people swatted, because all of that happened more than 5 years ago, he's being treated as a first-timer, hence the light sentence, which chances are he'll only serve half of. This sentencing pretty much concludes the case of the Vastamo hack, though something tells me we'll be hearing more from this guy when he's released. And if you want more details on the Vastamo hack itself, you can find my previous video on it up here. 4 major US cell networks have just been fined almost $200 million for selling access to the real-time locations of their customers. It's an almost unbelievable thought, but given these carriers dominate the US market, the real-time location of almost every phone in the US was at one point being sold to data brokers. And this fine from the FTC has been a long time in the making. It all started in 2018, when a US senator wrote to the chairman of the FTC, blowing the lid on potentially unlawful practices of wireless carriers. This was initially all about just one company, Securus Technologies. They'd been purchasing this real-time location data and then making that information available to law enforcement to assist in criminal investigations. But it turns out that the system they built was used to do a lot more than just catch bad guys. In one case, a US marshal pleaded guilty after he abused this Securus service to track a phone belonging to his ex. But this shouldn't have been possible, because in order for law enforcement to even use the service, they had to upload a legal document proving they had permission to track someone. But these documents weren't verified at all, meaning this US Marshal was not only uploading blank documents, but in some cases they were literally called blank doc. But even if Securus was verifying documents properly, it really doesn't matter, because this data was illegally obtained in the first place. Cell carriers simply didn't get consent to sell this data. I mean, it wasn't even buried deep in the privacy policy, and as the FCC explains, each carrier attempted to offload its obligations to obtain customer consent onto the companies that the data was eventually sold to. And to make matters worse, Securus was only the tip of the iceberg. The FCC's investigation found that in just the case of AT&T, for example, this location data was sold to 88 companies. Another example of a company that was buying this location data was called Location Smart. They even had a demo page that was completely public on the internet that anyone could use to find the real-time location of any given phone number. However, the phone being tracked did have to provide consent via SMS. Well, unless you were accessing the service via its API, which was horribly insecure and had no authentication at all. So in essence, you could find the real-time location of any phone in the US for free. This news is just insane. The only good news here is that this selling of data isn't going on anymore, at least as far as we know. The carriers suspended their location selling programs 5 years ago, and this $200 million fine is actually the result of a 4-year-long FCC investigation. But as you could have guessed, the carriers aren't too happy about the fine and intend on appealing. An out-of-control, zombified botnet is being targeted by white hat hackers. The PlugX botnet was created by China's Ministry of State Security back in 2008, and once it infects a computer, the Chinese hackers are able to perform screen capturing, keylogging, managing processes, pretty much all the features you'd expect. And the list of references on Malpedia here is extensive, because this malware has seen widespread use in various campaigns over the past 15 years. However, in 2023, for unknown reasons, the hard-coded IP used to control the botnet went silent. Its Chinese owners had simply abandoned it. Since then, the infected computers have essentially been zombies, which every so often ping their master's IP for instructions that never come. So as it stands, the malware on infected computers isn't actually doing anything malicious. However, this isn't a solved problem, because if a bad actor were to somehow take control of that IP, they could easily awaken the thousands of sleeper agents. And this is where researchers at Sequoia come in. They decided something needed to be done, and in September last year, contacted the hosting company behind the IP and bought it for a measly $7. By buying and sinkholing the IP, they ensured it couldn't be used maliciously. But the researchers were in for a bit of a surprise, because the PlugX botnet was thought to have been more or less dead. The researchers said they only thought a few thousand computers were still active and trying to reach that command and control server. Instead, in the months since they took control, they've observed almost 2.5 million unique IPs trying to connect to that IP, way more than anyone could have expected. And the researchers actually think that the vastness of the botnet might be the reason why it was abandoned by its Chinese overlords. This is probably because in 2020, the Chinese hackers upgraded PlugX by adding worm capabilities, allowing the malware to infect connected USB sticks. Upon infection, the stick's real contents would be moved to a hidden folder. Another hidden folder would contain PlugX malware files, but all the end user would see is a shortcut file with the same name of the drive, which when opened would result in the PlugX malware being executed and a new computer added to the botnet. The researchers think that this worm feature might have caused the botnet to get a bit out of control, and that the management interface of PlugX just wasn't designed for this many bots. But regardless of why it was abandoned, leaving the millions of bots as they are isn't a great idea, as you don't know who might come along next and take over the botnet. The researchers have considered utilizing a self-deletion command to completely erase the botnet, but this comes with its own problems, because if something goes wrong and the researchers delete more than they meant to, or somehow mess up victim PCs, then they could get sued into oblivion. And besides, there's probably a bunch of infected USB sticks lying around that, when plugged back in, could just reinfect the computer anyway. So the white hats have made the probably wise decision to hand the task over to law enforcement and make it their problem. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.